Ever wonder what it feels like to be the forgotten kid in your own family? Like your parents straight up tell you, hey, your brother's the main event. You're just here as backup. That was my life growing up. I'm Dr. Ethan Carter, and yeah, I was the spare to my brother's superstar. But here's the wild part. What if I told you that being sidelined was the exact thing that pushed me to outshine them all? Stick around, because this story's got betrayal, family drama, and a comeback that'll make you cheer. Let's hop in the time machine back to the early 2000s, when dial-up internet was a vibe, and my family's dysfunction was peak reality show material. I grew up in a cookie-cutter suburb in Ohio, in a house that looked like it belonged on a sitcom set. Picket fence, basketball hoop in the driveway, the works. But inside, it was less Full House and more Game of Thrones with extra favoritism. My parents, Karen and Tom, had a clear MVP in their minds. My older brother, Jake. He was their golden ticket, their pride and joy. Me? I was Ethan, the kid they seemed to keep on the roster just in case Jake fumbled. By the time I was old enough to ride a bike, I knew the deal. Jake was the headliner, and I was the opening act nobody clapped for. This wasn't just a phase or a quirky family dynamic. It was a full-on system, wired into how my parents saw the world. Mom was a high school English teacher who treated family life like a PR campaign, always polishing our image for the PTA and church potlucks. Dad ran a hardware store and had this retro mindset that the firstborn son was the family's legacy bearer. Together, they turned Jake's every move into a headline. His soccer goals, his C+ essays, even his prom date got more hype than my entire existence. My science fair projects or debate team wins. They'd get a, "That's cool, Ethan," before Dad launched into a monologue about Jake's latest game. I was 11 when I stopped expecting them to notice me. So, let's break down the cast of this suburban soap opera. First, there's Jake, 3 years older, with the swagger of a teen movie jock and the kind of charm that got him out of any mess. Jake wasn't a bad brother, honestly. He'd let me tag along to the arcade or slip me a few bucks when I wanted candy, but he never questioned the red carpet treatment he got from Mom and Dad. Why would he? They were funding his soccer camps, saving for his college, and hyping him up like he was destined to be the next Elon Musk. To Jake, that was just how the world worked. Then there's me, Ethan, lanky, nerdy, and way too aware of the family pecking order for a kid. I was the one who'd overhear Mom telling Dad, "Jake's our shot at something big," while I pretended to be busy with my comic books. I didn't resent Jake, not exactly, I just wanted a sliver of that attention, a moment where I wasn't the invisible kid. But every time I tried to stand out, acing a math Olympiad, building a model rocket that actually launched, I'd get a half-hearted nod before the spotlight swung back to Jake's next big moment. The big concept here is favoritism, and let me tell you, as a psychologist now, it's not just a buzzword. It's a psychological wrecking ball. When your parents play favorites, it doesn't just hurt. It makes you question your worth before you even know who you are. In my case, it was like living with a neon sign that said, "Ethan, you're Plan B." But here's the thing. Being the spare didn't just bruise my ego. It planted a seed, a quiet, burning need to prove I was more than their afterthought. Not by fighting or whining, but by building something they couldn't ignore. All right, folks, buckle up. This is where the story gets juicy. Being the spare in my family wasn't just a childhood vibe, it shaped every step I took into my teens and beyond. But it wasn't all moping and self-pity. Oh no, this is the part where I start figuring out how to turn the tables one small, stubborn move at a time. Let's break it down into the key moments that set me on the path to proving them wrong, with a few plot twists that even M. Night Shyamalan couldn't dream up. The invisible years, middle school misery. By the time I hit middle school, I'd mastered the art of being invisible. Jake was in high school, ruling the soccer field and the social scene, while I was the scrawny 12-year-old with glasses and a backpack full of library books. Mom and Dad's attention was laser-focused on Jake's varsity tryouts and college brochures, so I flew under the radar. But here's the thing about being ignored. It gives you space to think. And I was thinking hard. I'd lie awake at night replaying every "Jake's our star" comment, and somewhere deep down I made a promise to myself, I'm gonna be somebody, and they're gonna regret not seeing it. School became my escape. While Jake was out scoring goals, I was geeking out in the science club, building contraptions that occasionally exploded. Sorry, Mrs. Thompson's classroom. I wasn't trying to compete with Jake, not yet. I just wanted something that was mine. One day, I entered a regional science fair with a solar-powered model car I'd spent months tinkering with. It wasn't much to look at, but it worked. I won first place, beating out kids from fancy private schools. I came home buzzing, thinking, this is it. They'll finally notice. Spoiler, they didn't. Mom said, "That's nice, Ethan," while signing Jake's permission slip for a soccer camp. Dad didn't even look up from his newspaper. That stung, but it also lit a fire. If they wouldn't see me, I'd make the world see me. The first spark. Discovering psychology. Fast forward to freshman year of high school. I was 14, still the nerdy kid, but starting to figure out who I was outside my family's shadow. That's when I stumbled into psychology, and let me tell you, it was like finding the cheat code to life. It started with a class project where we had to analyze why people act the way they do. I picked family dynamics. Shocker, right? I dove into books about favoritism, self-esteem, and how kids internalize their parents' biases. Suddenly, my family wasn't just a mess. It was a case study. I remember reading about how favored kids often coast on praise, while the underdogs develop grit. That hit me like a ton of bricks. Jake was cruising, but I was learning to hustle. I started journaling, not just angsty teen stuff, but real observations about my parents' behavior. Like how Mom's smile was brighter when Jake walked in, or how Dad only asked about my day when Jake wasn't around. It wasn't just cathartic, it was empowering. I wasn't crazy for feeling invisible. It was a predictable pattern. And if it was predictable, I could outsmart it. This is where I made my first big move. I signed up for a psychology summer program at a local community college, forging Mom's signature on the form because I knew she'd say no if it didn't involve Jake. That summer, I was surrounded by college kids and professors who actually listened to me. I gave a presentation on how parental favoritism shapes ambition, and the room clapped. For the first time, I felt like I wasn't just Ethan, the spare. I was Ethan, the guy with something to say. The Jake Show, a reality check. Now, let's talk about Jake for a sec, because this story isn't just about me. By his senior year, Jake was the king of our town. Colleges were scouting him for soccer, and Mom and Dad were already planning their victory lap as parents of a star. But here's what they didn't see. Jake was starting to crack under the pressure. He'd come home from practice looking drained, snapping at Mom when she pushed him to train harder. I overheard him once muttering to a friend on the phone, "I don't even like soccer that much anymore." I could have gloated, but I didn't. If anything, it made me sad. Jake wasn't the enemy. He was just a kid caught in the same messed-up system, except his cage was gilded. That's when I realized something big. Their favoritism wasn't just hurting me, it was hurting him too. But while Jake was buckling, I was building. I started setting goals, not just to spite my parents, but to create a life where I didn't need their approval. Psychology became my North Star, and I was ready to chase it. High school hustle, flying under the radar. By junior year of high school, I turned being invisible into a superpower. Jake was off at college, chasing his soccer scholarship at a state university, and Mom and Dad were basically living vicariously through his highlight reels. Their dinner table talk was 90% Jake, his games, his grades, his bright future. Me? I was the background noise, which honestly worked in my favor. Less attention meant more freedom to hustle. I doubled down on psychology, devouring every book I could get my hands on. Freud, Skinner, even some pop psych stuff from the library's bargain bin. I wasn't just a nerd, I was a nerd with a plan. I started volunteering at a local youth center, running group sessions for kids who felt like outsiders, just like I did. It wasn't glamorous. Think sticky tables and kids arguing over whose turn it was to use the Xbox. But it was real. I'd listen to their stories, help them untangle their feelings, and for the first time I felt like I was good at something that mattered. One day, I pitched a project to the center's director, a workshop on building self-esteem for teens. I spent weeks preparing, using what I'd learned about favoritism and family dynamics. The workshop was a hit. Kids opened up, parents thanked me, and the director called me a natural. I was 16, and I'd found my calling. Did I tell Mom and Dad? Nope. I knew they'd just nod and pivot to Jake's latest goal. Instead, I tucked that win away, adding it to my mental "I'll show them" file. The college conundrum, playing the long game. Senior year rolled around, and it was time to think about college. This is where things got spicy. Jake's college journey had been a family production. Campus visits, scholarship applications, Mom practically writing his essays. Me? I was on my own. Dad handed me a stack of old brochures and said, "Pick something affordable." Mom's advice, "Don't stress us out, Ethan. Jake's got a lot on his plate." Classic, but I wasn't fazed. I'd been planning for this. I applied to every scholarship I could find, from obscure essay contests to local grants for future leaders. I spent nights in my room, typing applications while Jake's old soccer trophies stared at me from the shelf. My essay for a big national scholarship was about, you guessed it, how growing up as the spared child fueled my drive to help others through psychology. It was raw, honest, and maybe a little petty. I didn't name names, but I didn't have to. The day the acceptance letters came was surreal. I got into my top choice, a solid university with a killer psychology program, and I landed a full-ride scholarship. I was over the moon, ready for my big moment. So I sat Mom and Dad down, showed them the letter, and waited for the confetti. Their reaction? Mom said, "Oh, that's great, Ethan. Have you heard from Jake? His team's in the playoffs." Dad just grunted, "Good. One less tuition to worry about." I swear, I could have levitated a car with the sheer force of my suppressed rage, but instead of exploding, I smiled, nodded, and thought, "Keep sleeping on me. You'll wake up soon." Debunking the golden child myth. Let's pause for a quick reality check, because there's a myth I need to bust. Growing up, I bought into the idea that Jake had it all: the love, the opportunities, the easy road. But the more I learned about psychology, the more I saw the cracks. Jake wasn't living the dream. He was living their dream. By his sophomore year of college, he was struggling. The pressure to be the perfect son, the star athlete, was eating him alive. He'd call home, sounding exhausted, hinting at switching majors or quitting soccer. Mom and Dad, they doubled down, telling him to push through because he was their investment. I felt for him, I really did. One night he called me, not Mom or Dad, but me. He was drunk, rambling about how he felt trapped, like he couldn't fail or he'd let everyone down. I listened, gave him some big brother-turned-therapist advice, and realized something. Jake wasn't my rival. He was a victim of the same system, just in a shinier package. That call shifted something in me. My revenge wasn't about beating Jake, it was about breaking free from the whole toxic setup and showing my parents what they'd missed. All right, we're deep in the trenches of my journey now, and things are about to get real. I'm Ethan Carter, the kid once labeled the spare by my own parents. But by this point, I'm not just surviving, I'm thriving, plotting, and quietly stacking wins. College is my battleground, and I'm playing chess while my family's still stuck on checkers. Let's unpack the final stretch of my undercover glow-up with some twists that'll have you leaning into your speakers. College domination. Building my empire. Freshman year of college was like stepping into a new universe. No parents hovering, no Jake stealing the spotlight. Just me, a full-ride scholarship, and a psychology major that felt like my ticket to the stars. I hit the ground running, signing up for every opportunity that didn't have Jake's name written on it. research assistant gigs, psych club president, even a part-time job tutoring high school kids. I was everywhere. My dorm room looked like a war room with sticky notes of goals plastered on the walls. Publish a paper, get into grad school, make them eat their words. One of my proudest moments came in my sophomore year. I landed a spot in a professor's research lab studying family dynamics and self-esteem, basically my life in academic form. We designed a study on how parental favoritism impacts long-term ambition, and I poured my soul into it. Late nights, endless data crunching, and way too much coffee later, our paper got accepted to a national psychology conference. I was 19, presenting to a room full of PhDs, and they were nodding along to my ideas. When the conference organizers posted a photo of me at the podium, I sent it to my parents, thinking, surely this'll get their attention. Their reply, a text from Mom. Looks fun. Jake's team just won their division. I laughed it off, but inside I was like, challenge accepted. I'm just getting started. The side hustle, turning pain into profit. While I was killing it in school, I started a side project that became my secret weapon. Remember those youth center workshops from high school? I turned that into a legit business. I created an online platform, Think Blog meets Self-Help Hub, where I posted articles and videos about overcoming family baggage, building confidence, and flipping the script on feeling less than. I called it Underdog Mindset, a nod to every kid who's ever been overlooked. It started small, just me ranting into a cheap webcam about how favoritism screws with your head. But it resonated. Teens, college kids, even some parents started commenting, sharing their stories, and asking for advice. By my junior year, I had thousands of followers, a few sponsorships, and enough ad revenue to cover my textbooks. I even got invited to guest speak at a local high school, where kids mobbed me afterward, saying my videos helped them stand up to their own pushy parents. Every like, every email felt like a brick in the foundation of my new life, one my parents had no part in. I didn't bother telling them about it. Why would I? They were too busy framing Jake's latest team photo. The family reunion fiasco, a wake-up call. Now let's talk about the summer before my senior year, because this is where the family drama hits a boiling point. I went home for a big family reunion, the kind with aunts, uncles, and cousins you barely remember. Mom and Dad were in full, perfect family mode, bragging about Jake's soccer stats and his big plans, which, by the way, were looking shakier. He'd switched majors twice and was dodging calls from his coach. I was ready to keep my head down, eat some potato salad, and bounce. But then my cousin Lisa, who I hadn't seen in years, pulled me aside. She'd found my Underdog Mindset site and was obsessed. "Ethan, you're out here changing lives," she said, loud enough for half the backyard to hear. Suddenly, relatives were asking me about my work, my research, my plans for grad school. For once, the conversation wasn't about Jake. Mom and Dad looked confused. Like, wait, Ethan's doing stuff? Dad tried to pivot, saying, "Well, Jake's got a game next week," but Lisa cut him off. "No, Tom, let Ethan talk." "This is cool, Buren." I could have laughed it off, but the shift in attention was glorious. It was my first taste of what it felt like to be seen, and it only fueled my fire. College domination. Building my empire. Freshman year of college was like stepping into a new universe. No parents hovering, no Jake stealing the spotlight, just me, a full-ride scholarship and a psychology major that felt like my ticket to the stars. I hit the ground running, signing up for every opportunity that didn't have Jake's name written on it. Research assistant gigs, psych club president, even a part-time job tutoring high school kids. I was everywhere. My dorm room looked like a war room with sticky notes of goals plastered on the walls. Publish a paper, get into grad school, make them eat their words. One of my proudest moments came in my sophomore year. I landed a spot in a professor's research lab studying family dynamics and self-esteem. Basically, my life in academic form. We designed a study on how parental favoritism impacts long-term ambition, and I poured my soul into it. Late nights, endless data crunching, and way too much coffee later, our paper got accepted to a national psychology conference. I was 19, presenting to a room full of PhDs, and they were nodding along to my ideas. When the conference organizers posted a photo of me at the podium, I sent it to my parents, thinking, surely this'll get their attention. Their reply? A text from Mom. Looks fun. Jake's team just won their division. I laughed it off, but inside I was like, challenge accepted. I'm just getting started. The side hustle, turning pain into profit. While I was killing it in school, I started a side project that became my secret weapon. Remember those youth center workshops from high school? I turned that into a legit business. I created an online platform, think blog meets self-help hub, where I posted articles and videos about overcoming family baggage, building confidence, and flipping the script on feeling less than. I called it Underdog Mindset, a nod to every kid who's ever been overlooked. It started small, just me ranting into a cheap webcam about how favoritism screws with your head. But it resonated. Teens, college kids, even some parents started commenting, sharing their stories, and asking for advice. By my junior year, I had thousands of followers, a few sponsorships, and enough ad revenue to cover my textbooks. I even got invited to guest speak at a local high school, where kids mobbed me afterward, saying my videos helped them stand up to their own pushy parents. Every like, every email, felt like a brick in the foundation of my new life, one my parents had no part in. I didn't bother telling them about it. Why would I? They were too busy framing Jake's latest team photo. The family reunion. Fiasco. A wake-up call. Now let's talk about the summer before my senior year, because this is where the family drama hits a boiling point. I went home for a big family reunion, the kind with aunts, uncles, and cousins you barely remember. Mom and Dad were in full perfect family mode, bragging about Jake's soccer stats and his big plans, which, by the way, were looking shakier. He'd switched majors twice and was dodging calls from his coach. I was ready to keep my head down, eat some potato salad, and bounce. But then, my cousin Lisa, who I hadn't seen in years, pulled me aside. She'd found my Underdog Mindset site and was obsessed. "Ethan, you're out here changing lives," she said, loud enough for half the backyard to hear. Suddenly, relatives were asking me about my work, my research, my plans for grad school. For once, the conversation wasn't about Jake. Mom and Dad looked confused. Like, wait, Ethan's doing stuff? Dad tried to pivot, saying, well, Jake's got a game next week. But Lisa cut him off. No, Tom, let Ethan talk. This is cool, Buren. I could have laughed it off, but the shift in attention was glorious. It was my first taste of what it felt like to be seen, and it only fueled my fire. Here we are, folks. The moment where the underdog finally steps into the ring and lands the knockout punch. I'm Ethan Carter, the kid who was once just the spare, but by 23, I'd built a life my parents couldn't ignore, no matter how hard they tried. The stage was set for my big reveal, and it came at the most unexpected place. My grad school's award ceremony just months after starting my PhD program. Picture this: a packed auditorium, fancy chandeliers, professors in suits, and me, nervously adjusting my tie. I'd been named the recipient of the department's Rising Star Award for my research on family dynamics and my work with Underdog Mindset. It wasn't just a pat on the back. This was a big deal, complete with a plaque, a grant for my research, and a spotlight moment to give a speech. The kicker? My university had invited my family without telling me, thinking it'd be a sweet surprise. Oh, it was a surprise, all right. When I spotted Mom, Dad, and Jake in the crowd, my stomach did a backflip. They looked out of place, like they'd wandered into the wrong movie. I hadn't seen them in months, and their presence threw me off. But as I stepped up to the podium, something clicked. This wasn't just my moment. It was my chance to rewrite the script. I gave my speech, weaving in my story of growing up as the overlooked kid, how it fueled my passion for helping others, and how psychology gave me the tools to turn pain into purpose. The room was silent, then erupted in applause. I locked eyes with my parents, and for the first time, they weren't looking at Jake. They were looking at me. After the ceremony, Mom and Dad approached, all awkward smiles, and, "We had no idea, Ethan." Dad even mumbled, "We're proud of you." Jake, to his credit, gave me a genuine hug and said, "You're killing it, man." It was surreal, like I'd stepped into an alternate universe. But the real bombshell came when a local news outlet covered the event, calling me a rising star in psychology with a message for every underdog. The story went viral, racking up shares across social media. My inbox flooded with messages, and Underdog Mindset's follower count skyrocketed. I'd done it, not just proved them wrong, but built something bigger than their approval. That night was more than a win. It was a turning point. My parents' favoritism had shaped me, but it didn't define me. I'd taken their neglect and turned it into fuel, creating a career, a platform, and a purpose that reached thousands. The irony? My success didn't just eclipse Jake's fading spotlight, it showed them how wrong they'd been about both of us. Jake wasn't a failure, and I wasn't a spare. We were just two kids caught in their warped expectations, and I'd found a way out. The ripple effects were huge. My research got funding, my platform landed a book deal, and I started getting invites to speak at conferences. But more importantly, I became a voice for kids like me, proof that you can rewrite your story no matter how invisible you feel. My parents tried to bridge the gap after that, calling more, asking about my work. I kept them at arm's length, not out of spite, but because I didn't need their validation anymore. I'd built my own family, my followers, my mentors, my purpose. So that's my story. From the kid labeled the spare to a psychologist, speaker, and underdog advocate who proved them all wrong. Growing up in Jake's shadow wasn't easy, but it taught me something priceless. Your worth isn't tied to what others see in you. I took the pain of my parents' favoritism and turned it into a mission to help others find their voice. And yeah, seeing Mom and Dad's jaws drop at that award ceremony, that was the cherry on top of the sweetest revenge. A life well lived. If this story hit home, smash that like button and subscribe for more real, raw tales of triumph and drama. I'm Dr. Ethan Carter, and I'm here to bring you stories that make you think, laugh, and maybe even cry a little. Got a story of your own? Drop it in the comments. I read every one. And who knows, maybe you'll inspire the next video. What about you? Ever felt like the spare in your family or life? How'd you prove them wrong? Or maybe you're still figuring it out. Let's talk about it. Share your thoughts below, and let's build this underdog community together. Until next time, keep fighting for your spotlight.